Hey everyone, so we are back and today we'll be covering the APTM approach. So as we have already covered the transparotid approach, I thought this is appropriate to cover this approach also, so that we have covered everything, and as was also suggested to me by one of the subscribers who had Khushi, if I'm not wrong, who wanted this approach also covered. So today we'll be talking about APTM, and when we speak about APTM, we have to mention this article. Now, this APTM approach is not given very well in any of the traditional textbooks that we know. So when we mention APTM approach, this is the standard article. This is the article by Wilson given in BGMS in 2005. So let's cover this article now. So let's understand the incision planning for this. So you start off with the traditional preauricular incision, and then we have the downward extensions or the modifications. So the first one is the retromandibular one. We can see here the preauricular incision and the downward extension in being the retromandibular one. The second is the lazy S or the cervicomastoid. So this is the second modification, again a modification of the standard preauricular incision. The third is the raditectomy one. So a traditional preauricular with a raditectomy part. So these are the three variations or the three downward extensions you can give to a traditional preauricular incision. Okay, so now let's understand how to raise this flap. So this flap is raised in the subdermal fat plane, preserving the greater auricular nerve. So this is very important. The flap is raised in the subdermal fat plane. So just subdermis, there the flap is raised and it is superficial to the SMAS layer. Okay, so these are the two important points when raising a APTM approach, or when going through the APTM approach, that is you go subdermis and you go superficial to the SMAS layer. Next, you go anteriorly to approach the masseter muscle, which will be at the antero-inferior border of the parotid. So this is the parotid. At its antero-inferior part, the masseter muscle will be there. So our aim is to reach this point. So in this area, you only need to be aware of two things. Now this area, generally, once you approach this masseter part at the antero-inferior edge of the parotid gland, it will be just below the parotid duct. So you'll be clear of the duct, and generally in this area there will be no branches of the facial nerve per se, but if you do encounter, you'll just encounter the buccal branch of the facial nerve. So the buccal branch is retracted and the masseter is split in the direction of its fibers. In the deeper parts you can change direction. Finally you approach the periosteum, which is incised to get access to the fracture site. So in this diagram you can better see the branches of the facial nerve, the buccal branches, which can be retracted to access the masseter muscle, which is split in the direction of its fibers. So with that we cover the APTM approach, and to recap, so we give a traditional preauricular incision with any of the three modifications of the downward extensions. And so the flap is raised in a subdermal fat plane, and you go superficial to the SMAS, and your aim is to reach the antero-inferior edge of the parotid, where you will be able to see or visualize the masseter muscle. Here the masseter muscle is transacted in the direction parallel to its fibers, taking care of the parotid duct and also the buccal branch of the facial nerve, which are buccal branch of the facial nerve is retracted, and finally you give incision in the muscle and you reach the periosteum, which is incised to reach the fracture site. So there is one more part which I wanted to mention. So the question might arise to you, which of those three incisions or the three downward extensions are better? So for that you're free to peruse the literature. There is a lot of literature on that which approach is better, and there are various authors which say according to them. So this is a recent article which I found very useful, and in this they are comparing the cervicomastoid versus the retromandibular extension for the preauricular incision. So the prospective study. So I'm just quoting this. There are definitely more articles which you can see, and in this study they found that the cervicomastoid variant to be better than the retromandibular one. The only difference being that the time taken was less, not in any aspect or any variable other than that, just the time taken in the cervicomastoid variant was lesser because of maybe the laxity of the neck tissue. So that is one more point which I wanted to mention. So with this, I hope I've covered the APTM approach enough. If there are any questions or any other topics which you want me to cover, just drop those whichever topics you want me to cover in the comments, and I'll definitely look into it and I'll make videos on those. So thank you.